After the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they attacked Wake Island, which is where I was at the time. They attacked Wake Island about the same time, and I was standing lookouts, and I was able to see the fires burning on Wake Island at night from my lookout station, and they hit the island right away, and they bombed it at night, and they bombed it in the daytime, and so I was able to see all that, and then as we stood watches there, we were there to protect the island, and during that time I was standing lookout watches, and so we had to dive. We dove one time for a plane, and they took a bomb, and that caused us a little damage, and then they called us back into Pearl Harbor because we had damaged the gasket on the tank, and we were leaking, and it was hard to make a dive safely. So they told us to get our fannies back into Pearl Harbor, and so we just put on the engines and took off and headed for Pearl Harbor. And so we got to Pearl Harbor, and our escort picked us up, and he took us and escorted us into the harbor, and I was on number 1 line as I usually was, because we took our station on number 1 line as soon as we entered the harbor. And so here we were, say maybe 5 of us up there that had the duty to handle the line and the anchor and that number 1 station. And we were very happy, and we were congratulating each other, and kind of, it was slap you on the back and say, by God, we made it, because we didn't expect to be able to make it back to Wake Island, to Pearl Harbor. We just didn't think we were going to make it. We didn't think we were going to make it back from Wake. So anyway, here we are. We're in a very happy mood, and we're coming, and we looked up, and we started around the first bend as we got into the harbor, and right off to our left, we looked over there, and my God, there was one of our battleships, and all we could see was the sucker is grounded. She's headed off to the side. It's one of our battleships, and you're just stunned. There was not a word spoken. We couldn't talk to each other, because there was more to come. Just as soon as we started to turn the corner, we started hitting stuff in the water. We hit logs and debris and burned items, and the stink of the smell of oil and smoke, and it was just awful. So we were going fairly close to this big battleship, and she's just sitting there. And so we went on by her, and as we got a little bit farther, and we looked over, and here is the bottom of a battleship. It was the Oklahoma, and the bottom of it, half of the bottom is it's bottom up, right off the left of the channel there. And there were even welders working on the still cutting holes in the bottom of that of the Oklahoma, in order to see if there was always a chance there might be somebody in an air pocket or something like that, and they never gave up and just keep cutting holes or trying to get in there and see if they could rescue anybody, if there was somebody still alive. But then as you started to look up, and you looked at everywhere, both sides, on the right and on the left, it was just ships blown all to hell. I mean, other kind of boats and ships and cranes, and there was all kinds of activity then too. The boats were running all over the place trying to pick up, get debris out of the way and haul things where they needed to go, and in the cleanup. It was a complete cleanup of the whole harbor. The whole harbor was a mess. So that wasn't the worst of it. And then we went a little bit further, and of all things, there's a Battleship Row, and we had seen smoke over there on Battleship Row, and right the middle of that thing, you see the Arizona was sitting right there, and she was just blown to hell. I mean, she was still smoking, and the top part of the whole thing is blown off to the side. And actually, we were so stunned that we never said a word. I never heard a word from anybody else. All I was doing is looking from side to side. We're helpless. We couldn't do anything, and the stuff was bouncing off the. Oh, we could hear the debris bouncing off the front of the boat, and it was just gunk, and it was full of oil. And so anyway, it was not a pleasant trip. And as we getting a little bit past the Arizona, there we are. It was Battleship Row, and they're all damaged. They're all very, very badly damaged. Every ship we could see was damaged, and so then we have to take a little right turn then, and this battleship, all the battleships were sunk right there, and so we made this turn, and there's Ford Island where they kept airplanes there, a base for kind of, they had a little island there that was a part of the Navy Air there, and I'll be darned if there wasn't a big wing sticking up straight up in the air with a big meatball on it, the big old Japanese meatball, still just like a great big sign, "Welcome to the Pearl Harbor." Ha! And so then we have to take a right there. We let that go, and then we look ahead, and here is the sub base sitting back in there. And so we just pulled into Pearl Harbor, and we looked up on the parked on the side to the right of the entrance in there where we were going, and there was a miniature Jap sub sitting there, and there it is. They drug it out, and there it was, and they just left it. And then when we tied up at the dock, it was crazy because those guys were going nuts. They're running around with rifles. Everybody still. This was several days afterwards, and we got to get from the dock. We got to get up to the boat. So the officers had to get up to the thing, and we had to get the hell out of there and get to Royal Hawaiian where we had to go. But anyway, here we are, and we are there, and then we went on with the experiences we had after that, because there were a lot of things that happened to us because we didn't know the password and all that.